Hey everybody. Okay, so my name is Guillaume. Everybody calls me G. It's just simpler. And I studied, my life story is that I studied electronic engineering. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, to be honest. I wanted to be a professional photographer. I was going to be I loved electronics and engineering, but also liked the mechanical side of things. My uncle and family wanted me to be working on the mines as an engineer in the mines. I was going to do optometry at one stage. I mean, I was literally all over the map. So, and then I decided, well, the best thing to do is to actually get a trade behind your name. Get something that is, a proper trade that you can do. If things don't pan out. So I went off and I went to technical school, and I studied electronic engineering. Okay, cheers, Mark. And anyway, so I studied electronic engineering, did that for a few years, worked in a few companies. I managed to work at Mercedes-Benz in South Africa, work at a telecommunications company, etc., etc. But as I was going along with this, I was finding the internet and the web and the World Wide Web and stuff. This was all like 2001, 2002, 2003. And I was really interested in that. So one of my friends showed me what a website was and how it worked. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. That looks pretty easy. And because I did electronic engineering, I knew how to do the basics of coding and programming. So I was able to do some PHP development. And this eventually moved around me to start my own web development company, doing websites, online marketing. And while I was doing that, I was a founder in a startup. And I was like, wow, I don't really need much help because I had my little businesses now. I needed companies to come and send me businesses. So I joined like the BNI, Business Networking International, and I joined these things. I was like, I wonder what else is there. And I came across this thing called Startup Grind. And I was like, that looks pretty cool. No idea what it is. And then I got a message from them saying that, no, this meetup group's going to shut down unless you step up. So I was like, that's random, but okay. Nobody stepped up. Nobody took it over. So I figured, well, if nobody's going to do it, I'll take it over. I mean, hosting an event or doing this doesn't seem so difficult. Well, yep, hosting events are hard. So I started to get involved with Startup Grind. I hosted the chapters here in Cape Town from 2013 until 2017. So for 4 years, I ran the events here, hosting an event every single month. We started off with about 30 or 40 people attending, and I grew the community that we eventually had on average, about 150 to 180 people joining our events, paid for tickets every single month. So that was it was really a great experience, and to show how to work with the thing, being consistent, exceptionally consistent, no matter what. We hosted an event every single solitary month, January through to December. Obviously, as December's holiday, South Africa completely shuts down because that's our big holiday, that's our summer holiday. So we'd do a party, or we'd do something small, or we'd get together, or we'd partner with another organization, but we did something at the end of the day. And I realized that by getting in good speakers, working with partners, and being consistent, religiously consistent, it really helped to grow the community because they knew that every single month there was a Startup Grind and they could come to it. I didn't stick so much to the date like, every Tuesday of the first week of the month. I didn't do that. But sometimes it's better to do that, but I didn't because my venue kept changing or my venue dates were difficult to get, or I had to accommodate the speaker, etc. But it allowed us to get, and because of that consistency, we were able to get better and better speakers. And we really had some incredible, we even had 500 startups flying into Cape Town, and they were able to speak at our events in Cape Town and stuff. So we had some really, really cool things. Grew up a team, having a team around you, successful team helping you to do things you can't do on your own. You just can't. Like I was running around like crazy trying to get things done. But having a team, my team eventually built up to 20 people, full-time, no, part-time, 100% part-time volunteers. At 20 people, some of them literally just handed out flyers. Some of them did some marketing. Some of them did very basic things. But they helped at the end of the day getting that word out and growing that community. So that was Startup Grind, and then while I was busy doing that in 2015, Derek, the founder of Startup Grind, reached out to me and said, "Listen, you've been to global, we've met you, you're very interactive in the group, etc. Would you like to be part of Startup Grind HQ and actually help us oversee Africa, Middle East, and Asia? So I was like, let's do this. So I shut down my web development agency, and I became a community manager. Sorry, my kid is running around. It's supper time for him. Anyway, so that is how I became a community manager. I had no idea that there was such a thing as community management or that other people were doing this. I just was like, I'm just busy like helping to organize that these volunteers do their monthly events. I mean, nobody else in the world is doing this, so I must be the only person in the world doing this. Okay, this is great. And anyway, as I went along, I realized that community management is actually a thing. There's this whole industry behind it. There's, like we were saying earlier, there's practices and best practices, and there's, you can create progression diagrams, etc. And there's cool tools and resources that can help you in community management. And that's how I got into managing communities. And also because it was part of Startup Grind, it was really incredible to have that experience of working with a global community, hosting these events. So yeah, when I joined, Startup Grind was about 100 and something chapters. And now we're sitting at about 600 plus chapters over the last 5 years. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think Startup Grind can attribute that success to? What makes it so appealing that it has spread across the world? To how many different countries are we at the moment?
Actually, Madeline will be able to give a better answer to that, but I think 120, 130, somewhere around there. Wow. Yeah.
So, what do you think is that appeal? What's kind of the attraction to Startup Grind?
Well, what is the attraction to any community, really? And it comes down to why. Why are you coming together? Having that ethos in the community, but having the reasons for coming together. So they're all coming around Startup Grind. They're coming around the ideal of let us help other entrepreneurs, and let's do that at a global level. That is what people bring them in. So people join for various reasons. Obviously, they've got their own personal things, or it's altruistic, or it's because they want to be seen as a leader in their community, or it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the reason why they're even attracted to Startup Grind in the first place is because of what Startup Grind stands for. And it's really important. If you look at all the communities around the world, if there isn't something that they're standing for, nothing happens. There has to be that true north. There has to be that goal, the reason why they're coming together. So whenever people are putting together a community or wanting to start a community, I always ask them, listen, why are you starting this community? Because it's nice. I want to chat to my friends or something. Oh, okay, that's cool. That's a nice little group. That's totally fine, but that's not going to scale. That's not going to grow. If you don't want to scale or grow, and it's just be your group, that's fine. But if you want this to become a bigger thing, then you have to have that reason why, and you have to have not a motto or a cause behind it that will help drive people into it and get people to buy into why you're doing things.
Okay, and did you, when you joined Startup Grind, was this made very clear to you at the start? Like, this is our why, this is why we're running things? Or was that kind of something which developed over time?
It's to communicate, educate, and inspire. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Just for everyone listening in, some of you contributed the questions when you signed up for the ticket, but feel free, as we're talking here, if you've got any questions which you think of live, please throw them into the chat, because I'll be going through some of the ones asked in advance. Anything live will be coming to as well, so please feel free to interact and share any questions you might have for G. So before we dive into some of the questions we were asked, I just want to ask one thing, G. You spent quite a long time with electrical engineering, and that's what you studied. Has that helped you in any way with community? And is there any parallels between electrical engineering and what you've done with the community?
Yes and no. I think the biggest thing for me for community is that I love systems and processes and efficiency. So having had studied electronic engineering helped me to do some coding and do basic understanding of systems. I find a lot of community managers that don't understand systems battle because it's just so much information. So they don't know how to put the reports together. They don't know how to manage the community's information. They don't know how to Not that they don't know how to, but they just battle with it. It just doesn't come naturally to them. And that's fine, because what happens is they excel and they're really good in other stuff, in actually bringing the community together, in actually creating those dialogues and communications, or creating really cool rituals within the community, which is very important. So it doesn't matter, just because you're not good at one thing, it doesn't mean to say that you're bad at everything, you know? So everybody's got their strengths, and you really have to play to your strengths. And for me, I was able to play to the strength of creating efficiency. The reason why we were able to scale to 600 chapters was because I was able to put systems in place to be able to manage those 600 chapters and the systems around that, etc. And the information flow. And, you know, if you're having 100 people or you're having 1,000 people applying for something, and you're manually capturing those things in emails, then you've got to go through your emails to find all 1,000 emails and then send them to the next email. You're going to be doing emails all day, you know. But if you had an actual process or a program that could push them through the whole process, totally automated, you can easily get through 1,000 people, find your 100 people and onboard them and get them up to running and get them trained, etc. So, you know, it's yes, that has helped me in the electronic engineering field, but it's not, I didn't like use any guru or magic or anything. It's very, very, very basic. Hardly coding. It's the API. It's what they actually call no code and low code. I use no code and low code principles to scale.
Okay. And have you got an example, again, you kind of mentioned like the email situation, but have you got an example of a system you implemented which really, really was influential with Startup Grind, for example?
Well, we did the onboarding application, which when I started was done on spreadsheets. It was really hard to keep track of everything. We've been through 3 or 4 iterations. In fact, I think they've really completely changed the whole process again, which is good. It's you know, evolving and getting better and better. So I built a system which allowed us to automate the process for the applications. Once they've applied and they go through everything, fill in all the information, all automated with emails and back and forth. Then once it's complete, we then vet them, we jump onto calls with them, and then from there, and because it's all in the system, you know exactly who you got to call and who you got to contact, where they're on, what stages, everything in the dashboard. And then from there, we are able to choose the people that we like. And then once we've approved them because of you know, the right fit for the community, we then are able to onboard them and train them properly. So creating using LMS tools, which is learner management systems, I think. So using these systems to be able to teach them, because at the end of the day, if the community don't know your rituals, they don't know what you're standing for, they don't know your tools, they don't know, you know, standardizing how an event looks like, how this works, when to do this, who to go for this help. If they don't know that, it's just going to be a mess, and then you're spending your day just helping them. But if you teach them and train them, it takes a lot of the work away from you, from the support side, which means you can focus more on the actual community and other important things.
I think that's awesome. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of not systematizing my things enough. I'm definitely very manual right now, and I probably could benefit from it.
Everybody, don't worry. That's and even at Startup Grind, we're still busy trying to watch. There's so many things that are manual. It's just one of those things. Yeah.
Sure. So let's jump into some of the questions which were asked before. And like I said, if anybody's got questions that you think of live while we're chatting, please jump in and go ahead. So since we've got Philip on the call, I think we'll start. I think Philip asked a question. He said, where do you draw your inspiration from to keep your events interesting and the community engaged after so many years? So have you got an answer for that, Chi?
That's actually a good question, as in, it really depends on your community. Now, at Startup Grind, I don't know, Philip, do you mean at the global level or do you mean at a local level? If you could just reply in the chat there. But basically, actually, do you want to bring everybody up on stage and we can have an actual conversation with everybody? Do you want to do that?
We could do.
I don't know, does everybody want to jump on?
Yeah, sure.
We can actually have a conversation. Make it interactive.
We could. Let me just let's try it. So anybody, if you're on the call right now, I'm going to bring you on stage. Feel free to keep your camera off if you want. Feel free to still listen in if you want, but
just accept the permissions to come on, or otherwise deny the permissions, and that's fine. Don't have to come on. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I've just given you all permission to come on stage. Let's get this rolling.
Like a true AMA style. Hey, Philip. There we
Thanks,
go.
Philip. Hey, Philip.
Hey, you got good internet in Cape Town. Very good. Sorry, Tom.
So Philip actually said it's for local events, but the community on a global scale. It's Madeline. Hey, Madeline. And Sabina's there as well. I know Sabina.
That's Sabina.
Hey. Yeah, did you wanna have you got an answer for that, G? What would you say about local events? How can you where do you draw your inspiration from over
okay, yeah. So I see Philip asked for local and then global. So locally it was about the hot topics. Really, it being local, you know what's going on and you're feeling that pulse. You know, like, oh, right now crypto's hot, or right now creativity. Because I know, Philip, you're running the community side, that side. So, you know, right now the creativity in marketing is really hot. So let's get speakers, let's talk about that. And that's one of the things, looking at the different trends, but then also looking at what is lacking in the community. So where do you see the gaps? For example, at one stage, very few workshops were being held in this ecosystem. So let's put workshops together to be able to help train people up to get to the levels where they need to be for whatever reason. And that's obviously, I'm talking in the entrepreneurship world. For yourself in the design world, you know, actually, Philip, tell us a bit about yourself. There we go. You've got a cool story. So.
Yeah. So as far as community management is concerned, on a local scale, it would be running a local chapter of Creative Mornings Cape Town here for the past 8.5 years,
nice.
odd years. But I really do love engaging global communities as well, helping out with a bit of community management on the Buffer marketing community as a community host there as well. On a professional background, though, I'm a traditional marketing manager, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. So there's a bit of interest in all of that. So that's a super valuable AMA for me today. So thanks so much for the insights there. And I mean, yeah, from our personal dealings, G's been like a massive inspiration ever since. So yeah, thanks so much for that.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Awesome. First of all, respect Philip as well. Like 8.5 years of hosting the Creative Mornings events. That takes some real going. So respect for that.
There's a lot of it. I think our longest chapter at Start of Grind is also about like 7 years or 8 years. So that's like the longest. And it's literally about 2 or 3 people that are doing that. So yeah, that's really incredible. So yeah, it's coming down to the themes, looking at the pulses, looking at it. I get it from talking to people. The inspiration I'm from talking to people, seeing what's happening, going to events, seeing what's happening on the ground at a local level. At a global level, it's looking at the trends in our industry. Where are people going? What are people talking about? What's happening? And because we have so much people talking about things, you can kind of pick up some of the trends. Like, for example, in 2018, Bitcoin was super hot. Right now, Bitcoin is hot again because, you know, the explosion or crypto, etc. You know, so it's just keeping an eye on those things and creating themes around that, and putting information from the people on the ground, because you're there to serve them at the end of the day. Yeah.
I've got a question related to that. What kind of method do you take for that? Is it being there at the event, listening in person, kind of keeping note of the topics coming up? Is it like emails and feedback questions? Is it you know, other types of methods? What is your method for getting feedback from people?
My personal method is everything, like email, everything. And it's just like, oh, I've got a feeling that this is quite hot right now. That's me. But you can also systematize it much more and make it a more proper process and send out surveys. You know, people hate filling in surveys, and it's really hard to get people to fill in surveys. But if you're able to, like, hey, here's a free ticket to your next event, although Creative Mornings is free, but like Start of Grind, hey, here's a ticket for your next free event or whatever, then that definitely is a way to garner more information that is more structured.
If we go super macro for a second, like, where do you dump these ideas once you've got them? Is it like, what do you use to dump these ideas?
Oh, okay. It's actually something I really enjoy is keeping documentation. I hate writing, and I'm very bad at keeping lists, but I've learned one thing. Lists are incredible. It doesn't matter what tool you use. I do not care, but keep a list of stuff. It's ridiculous how often you like, and if you know where you keep your lists and your lists are structured, you can easily dive in and find the information you need. Sure, there's Evernote and there's everything. My favorite tool for keeping lists of things was Streak, because the company used Streak. So I was able to keep, and you can keep people's emails, and you can, when somebody emails me, you can see the information. So that's streak.com. It's a CRM that's built into Gmail. Really, I highly recommend if you're looking for a very lightweight CRM, get that. But if you're looking for your personal place to dump your own personal notes, I highly, highly, highly recommend Workflowy. Yeah. So Workflowy is nothing else but bullet point lists. And you can have a bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and then you can go under that bullet point, you can have another bullet point which indents. And then you can indent in that and indent, and you can go infinitely deep and infinitely out. So you can then, say for example, you have 5 bullet points and these ones are 5 levels deep. You click on that bullet point and it zooms into that bullet point and everything disappears, and you just see that one bullet point, and then you can work off it. And it's amazing. So you can have your high-level lists, and then inside of that, you're capturing your information. You can use hashtags for keeping track of trends or categories or anything. And if you start getting into Workflowy, you can literally go down a wormhole for months on the power of Workflowy and the add-ons that you can put into Workflowy. It is just phenomenal. I don't like Evernote because Evernote is too, you got your different sections. You got to click into that. In those sections, there's information. It's just too bulky, too big, too much. It's not. Workflowy is super simple, super lightweight, super fast, and it works the way my brain works. That's just personally me. That's but cool. There are other ones. There's a competitor to Workflow, and I can't remember the name now, which is also quite good if your brain works differently. And then, yeah, it really depends on you.
Yeah. Sweet. I really love Notion. I use Notion.
Notion's amazing. Yeah. Notion's incredible. Absolutely.
I've been using that a lot recently. When I'm researching stuff and I'm brainstorming ideas, I put it into Notion, and that's kind of my place for now.
Notion and Airtable I absolutely love those tools. Really amazing.
Great. It looks like Beth's joined the call, so I'm actually going to read Beth's question out now.
Cool.
She contributed before the
Welcome,
event,
Beth.
And she said, how do you truly keep your community global amidst language barriers, cultural differences, and time zones? Have you got an answer for that?
How do you keep your
community truly global amongst language barriers, cultural differences, and time zones?
With extremely great difficulty. In order to keep it global, you have to speak one language. We, obviously speak English, being a more American company. However, having said that, not restricting the local communities to speak English. So what we did as Startup Grinders Events in the beginning, it was like you had to speak English at your event, speak English, everything was English. And that's fine because we were mostly in English-speaking countries, and we needed to standardize it and just get things going. But as we grew, we've had to go to like, listen, you can speak in your own language, because some people would join the community and they weren't able to speak the language. Hey Beth, welcome to Come On Camera. And at the end of the day, it is really difficult to keep that. Cultures are extremely difficult because the difference and nuances within culture is very difficult. You being who you are, you don't know the other person's culture. You can't say you do unless you actually spend years and years training in their culture or learning their culture. And that will be one subset of so many different options. Yes, you can, at global regions, there are different nuances and stuff to take note of. Like in certain countries, it's if you talk loud, you must talk softly, and you must be looking down, you mustn't be looking in the eye, certain things like that. The important thing about all of this is to ensure that you are mindful of it, that you're not putting your ideas and your, what's the word that Google uses, your objectives onto it, or your unconscious bias, that's it. You're not using your unconscious bias, being very conscious of your unconscious bias. So when you're talking to somebody, that person's talking soft or loud or something, sorry, my kid's having a fun time out here. You can see me, oh boy. So if you are ensuring that you are keeping that idea and the unconscious bias in check, and somebody's talking soft to you, don't think it's because they're scared or because they think it's just realizing that they're from a different thing. And by accepting it and by making sure that you're checking all of those things, it will help you in order to make the right decisions or better decisions. And every single time you write anything, write it out, brain dump it, and then make sure you dumb the conversation down to a very, very basic level. You don't know, somebody in China might not be able to speak English properly. They cannot read English properly. So by you saying, oh, this is a fantastic, jolly time of colloquialism and whatever, it's just not going to help. So keeping that language as simple and basic as possible, not being all like, oh, look at me, I can write in beautiful prose and poise, etc., it's really about taking and stripping away all ego, stripping away all, oh, but I'm always right, stripping away all of that, all of those biases. And it's, I promise you, it's difficult. It is extremely difficult, especially at a global community. And you forget how quickly you fall back into things. Yeah. Madeline's got a question. I don't know.
Is that something you take?
Sorry, Tom. Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry. You still there, G? Yeah. I think my internet might have been a bit unstable then. Is that something which you actively, when you're dealing with chapter hosts in different places, is that something you actively take into each session? You kind of approach them with this very open mind and think, is that, do you like systematically approach it every time like that?
Yeah, whenever we communicate, definitely. Whenever we're jumping on calls with anybody, it's always like, okay, gee, we're jumping on with somebody, let's, like when we're interviewing people and stuff, I'm always cognizant of that, absolutely, yeah. And you have to be cognizant of it all the time. And if it's not part of your all day, every day, then it's a problem.
Beth, did you have any follow-up questions about that for G?
No. I actually had a question. And maybe this can just go out to everyone, but something that we're really focused on at Startup Grind is helping our chapter directors just get more people to attend their virtual events. I think in the beginning there was like this huge wave, and now it's just kind of slowing down, and it's really kind of hitting everyone's confidence on how to just get more than 20 people in the room compared to like in-person events where you could easily have, 60 to 100. So I was just wondering if anyone in the room, besides just getting like really big speakers or having like neighboring chapters and neighboring communities, like cross promote and collaborate on events, if anyone has seen any other like marketing tips or just things that have like really worked to bring more people into the room.
That is a good question. I'm not going to answer that right now. I'm going to wait till anybody else says something, and then I'll answer it towards the end. Sabina, if you want to chat or say something, or you have an idea, or Beth, or Philip, or Tom. You're hosting monthly events.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I've noticed in some of the other things I've been hosting is just, and I guess you know this anyway, but the only thing I've felt is really listening to what's really needed to say right now. Like, for example, people always attend stuff they need to, not the stuff they want to. So it's finding the stuff which maybe isn't being put elsewhere and providing that is the key thing. And, for example, I think what would be super popular right now, it might not be big events, but it'd be super intimate events, would be like almost like dealing with uncertainty, for example. And I know there's been tons of stuff on this, but creating like small mastermind groups around dealing with uncertainty or stuff like that, I think would still be able to get a really strong membership. We're coming back regularly at a time like right now. But that's just what I
well, thank you.
Very true. Yeah. If anybody else says something to that, Philip or somebody? Yeah, Philip, yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking an example from Creative Mornings because that was like also a in-person community that now has been taken virtual since almost a year. Like March last year was the last physical event. And we've been going through some chapters early adopting, other chapters like really taking long, some chapters not having any virtual events at all. So it was a bit of a learning curve for all. I think from some of the chapters that were sort of jumping on board later on, they were like drawing a lot of sort of learning and conclusions from the chapters that were pioneering it. And what was very unique for Creative Mornings always was like sort of the creative aspect of how to run an event. Yes, it's a traditional talk series like any other, but that charm, or like the sort of little interesting creative intros, or a little game ahead of a talk, a little icebreaker. They've been amazing for the in-person gatherings, but I've been blown away by what some of my fellow chapter hosts have also come up with in the last year of like how to convert that one into like a virtual event. Like some chapters would literally have a band perform on like basically in their own studio for the event, but customized to the theme. So they would be all dressed up. They would encourage people also to dress up. It obviously doesn't work for all kinds of events. For like an inspiring morning talk, this is just perfect. You know, everyone's waking up, everyone's getting inspired, having a cup of coffee. An interesting sort of game series was also just to get the blood flowing and everything was like the raise your mug. So there's a whole like list of like 20 different questions. Raise your mug if you're in dire need of a haircut. Raise your mug if you're wearing actual pants right now. Things like that. And it makes people smile, and it makes people engage. And that made a whole difference in like how they remember the event. They're not just there to like passively sit by, but they became part of the event. And if it's just for 5 minutes ahead of an event, and finding 20 questions like that is super easy. Most of them are available out there for icebreaker questions, long lists, lists again, key. There's quite a few of them. So yeah, that has really worked wonders for 3/4 of the year. And I think general event fatigue then, virtual event fatigue kicked in, and I'm very curious to see what everyone else like could mention, because at least for our local chapter, we're battling with that exact same issue as well now, and kicking off the year in February. So yeah, if anyone else has some great ideas.
Well, that's a great idea. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Philip. What's the power of unity, right? Bringing all these great ideas together. I think from my side, one of the things is we can't treat virtual the same as in person, because you're not getting the same things out of it. So, why are you hosting local events at a local level? Why aren't you only hosting global events? And that's one thing. Why not having a thing together? Okay, bye, Sabina. Thanks for joining. Bye. So why are you doing that? I'm just talking hypothetically. It's just we need to rethink about things. Like if you look at virtual, everybody's moving to virtual, but they're still trying to emulate the offline. Why? Yes, sure, there's certain experiences and benefits and stuff, but you can't get certain things. You can't just casually walk past somebody and stop for 5 minutes and talk to them online. But what you can do is you can jump from here to Australia within the blinking of an eye, So leveraging the powers of that. So that's one thing, is just rethinking why you're doing it. And then does it have to be monthly? Maybe you do a quarterly call in your community, because it is event fatigue. People don't want to go to event. But if you have 4 events a year that are just mind-blowing, amazing with great speakers or whatever, then you'll have your numbers will be up again. Whereas in person, it's more people coming, they're meeting other people, they can catch up with friends. It's a very, very different style, different thing. Online, you don't sit and chat with each other. You can't have, for example, in this room, you can't all sit and chat. Like Beth can't chat to Philip while I'm chatting to Madeline at the same time. But at the same time, I could share my screen and share knowledge, and do other things that I can't do on, trying to explain how to get somewhere offline. You have to pull up Google Maps, and then, whereas now I can share my screen and I can show so much more information. So I think it's just rethinking these things is very key in order to help us engage the communities more and better. And like Philip is saying, making it engaging moments where you're not just joining, you're coming on, you're checking, and then leaving. I could do that by watching a video on YouTube. There must be something out of benefit. We do that with Bevy, that we're on now, this platform. You can do the breakout rooms, and I've seen that exceptionally powerful with massive conferences right down to small meetups. You just do a little breakout room. Everybody goes into their breakout rooms for 5 minutes, one-on-one conversations, or 2 or 3 people in the room. They chat for a few minutes, they come back. I used to do it when I was running my chapter year. I did the chapter for 2 months online last year at Cape Town. And the people would come on and they'd all look at each other and be, you'd have the talk. And then I'd break them out into the rooms. And then I bring them back and I'm, hello, what's up? Oh, this is so amazing. The whole energy, the whole vibe just completely changes just because they were now able to interact with this one person. And they come over and I found my co-founder, or, oh, that was incredible. And, it's through that energy, because it's really hard to get energy online. Like just from me talking more animated, you guys are smiling. Everybody, the whole energy in this room has just changed. But it's really tough to do that online, So yeah, that's from my side. Hope that helps, Madeline.
I've got a question which is related to this. Like, it sounds like you're very, I don't know if I'd use the word empathetic or just attuned, I guess is the best word, to the way people are feeling like when they're thinking about events. It's almost beyond. I've spoken to lots of people within the community industry, but you seem very, very attuned. Like, is that natural, or is that something you've kind of worked on?
That's actually a good question. Don't know if it's natural or worked on, but what I have noticed when I started my event at Startup Grind, I made sure that the experience was an amazing experience. And I don't know why I did that. I was just like, well, if I go to an event, I want to feel like I'm being held on kid gloves and I want a nice experience. So I used to do so much, but I used to pull so much effort into my lighting and into the visual aspect. So when you climb out of your car at the venue, there was somebody there to greet you and walk with you, or at least you'd see, oh, there's a banner, that's where I need to go. And you felt protected. I would have a security guard in South Africa. It's important that you are feeling safe from your car to the venue. Then you walk into the venue. I'd have arrows the whole way through guiding you. So you didn't have to think about it. And it took me hours to put those damn flyers, those damn arrows up, because the one venue was in the clock tower, which Philip knows, which is like you got to go through 3 different lifts across 3 different things. It was ridiculous. Then when you come inside, there's nice music playing, and you come in and you see this. You can ask Madeline about the Startup Grind playlist. Actually, some of that playlist has made it into the Bevy playlist. So you walk in and you're feeling this really cool vibe, and that vibe makes you go, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. And then the person that greets you at the door, every single touch point about the entire way was just, I made sure that you felt great the whole way. So by the time you're sitting down, you're not just, oh, this is another event. You come in there, nobody's spoken to you. I'd have ambassadors walking around the room, talking to each other, making sure that they would, if they saw somebody standing alone, they'd go up to, hi, I'm so-and-so, can I help you? Can you do this? Or, and just find out who they are. Just show some basic interest in the person. It's not difficult. And they totally open up. It's incredible. Online it's difficult because everybody comes into the room. So they're all sitting here. You can't have those little one-on-one conversations. Okay, everybody jumps in, chuck them into the breakout rooms so they can create the energy. Okay, listen, we're in breakout rooms now. The meeting's starting in 5 minutes. We'll do 3 minutes quickly. Some more people join. Okay, we're now going to send those 3 people. We're going to do another 3 minutes of breakout rooms. Cool. Everybody's in the breakout rooms. They're all chatting. The conversation's going. Right, let's bring them back now. Now let's do the introduction. Let's do the stuff that has to be done. All right, afterwards, let's do some more breakout rooms to end the session off. Or like, I love Philip's ideas of the gamification around it. It really, really makes a big difference. So yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. And Madeline said in the comments here as well that the reason she's still at Startup Grind is because you made her feel so welcomed. It's definitely a special gift. So that's really, really awesome to hear. And I think, I think it's something which must come. It sounds like something you just do so naturally. Even on this call today, as soon as somebody joined, as soon as somebody left, it's almost just natural. You're like, oh, bye, hi, da da da. So it must be, it's really admirable. And well done, thank you. I appreciate it.
Donato said something about the PhD communities. Maybe it's something I could do. Look at how best to communicate to a global audience with different cultures. I think that'd be a really incredible. That'll be an incredible resource on how do you communicate with different cultures as a community manager. That'd be like if I had that, it'd be amazing. Yeah, that'll be really cool, Donato.
I tell you what, Donato they actually also asked a question before the event, and they said, how can you foster a shared language within the community? Have you done any of that as Startup Grind, and what's the approach?
Well, I said when it comes to pure language and not rituals or anything, then around pure language, we were just 100% English, because it's the business language. Most people can speak it that are in the different countries. So we just used that as our go-to. And, you know, like when we come together, everybody speaks English with each other, because we do come together at the global conference every year. You know, we can speak to that. But as far as the other languages around the softer languages and soft touch things and rituals, you know, there were things that the community would bring out that would be like an internal joke, and then we'd try and share that among everybody and have everybody could buy into that. Well, I suppose not the word language, but like that little joke or that little thing. And that really helped bring the community together around certain aspects. As the community grows, I find you get like 60, 80, 150, 250, 600. Those are your kind of cutoff points. So like when you're at 60, and this is more in person, when I was 60 people meeting, I knew everybody in the room, everybody knew me. It was amazing conversation, it was nice. 30 people's intimate, it's really nice, or less. 60 people was like, it was quite a nice, like, there was enough people to make it like a nice event, but a few people to still keep it intimate. The minute we hit 80 people, I started missing, I didn't catch this person's name, I wasn't able to talk to everybody. It started getting bigger, but it was still kind of okay. But then you hit the 120, 150s and 200s, then the community starts breaking apart. It's not that close knit community. At Startup Grind, I saw that as well. When I joined Startup Grind, we were 60 chapter directors. So we were able to communicate with each other, and they were all very, you know, we'd all talk with each other. Now that's not happening as much, but that's okay, because the community's evolved and has changed. And now you're getting these smaller micro communities within the macro community. And that's actually quite cool. Like look at Reddit. It's one of the largest communities, but there's hundreds of thousands of micro communities and micro communities within those communities, you know, and that's what naturally happens. And if you're able to create those micro communities, they still feel like they're together as part of one big thing, because they know that they're all there for that one big thing. So as your community grows, make sure you do create micro and actively create them, but without siloing other people. And that's very tricky to do. That's tricky. To create those micro communities when now starts being inner circles, that you don't want that. So it's a very, you know, you've got to be communicating, hey, we've got this community happening, anybody can join, you know, and you're making sure that there's somebody that is running that community that is able to, you know, like at Startup Grind, we had people that were very passionate about Bitcoin and blockchain. So they created their own little chats and channels and everything. But we would tell people, hey, join this, and then we'd have somebody that would at least help welcome them into that channel. So if you're new there, you don't feel like, oh, these guys are talking down at me, or they like, don't want me there. They're actually welcoming me in. And then, you know, it fosters that community.
Is that your approach? Is it kind of noticing like this sub-community which is building, or noticing the fact that the community needs to divide and kind of building like a new onboarding process for that?
Yes and no. I don't actively do it because I don't want to divide and I don't want to call it out, but I notice it and I just make sure that those inner communities are welcoming to other people of the greater community, which is very tricky to do, especially online, because you're not sitting there next to the people. But you'll see somebody mention somebody else will mention something, you know they're going to go off and chat, that's fine. Then you see the third or fourth person, you're like, wait a minute, something's happening here. Okay, wait, let's make sure that this gets integrated in properly throughout the entire process.
Okay, cool. I'll tell you what, there's a few more questions which were submitted beforehand, but just I want to give people a chance who are on screen right now. Do you have any questions right now for G, which have come to mind from anything we've just discussed?
Philip had one, I think.
Philip Madden.
Philip, your no-go question.
Yeah, if you have any event no-go, something that you would at all cost avoid?
Yo, that is actually a tricky question. The one thing I would 100% avoid, I actually don't know, because at the end of the day, it totally depends on the community and what you're trying to do. For example, for me personally, if I ever host an event, I'll make sure the AV, the lights, it's done nice, and I'll pay the money that needs to be paid and get sponsors to do it. But my successor that took over Startup Grind, they didn't do that, and it was fine. The community still grew. The community still went on. That was totally fine. The community did change as a result, which is interesting, but it also changed because it's a different leader. So that it's a totally different feeling and a totally different way of doing things, and different networks and different connections, etc. So it wasn't a bad change at all. In fact, it was actually maybe even a better change. And it opened things more up to other people, and it did more certain things. So at the end of the day, like, if I, like, oh, would you ever run an event if only less than 10 people rocked up and you cancel the event? No. 5 people in a room can have the most incredible conversations. Or what about a bad speaker? Bad speaker, there is no such thing as a bad speaker. Everybody learns things. I could be a really bad speaker because somebody could be sitting here going, gee, you're talking tiddlywatts, and I don't really care what you're saying, and that's fine. So I'm classified as a bad speaker then. So at the end of the day, there isn't the fact that you're hosting events and you're bringing people together, whether it's online or offline, around a shared vision or purpose in order to help them get better at what they're doing. There is no such thing as wrong.
Okay, that's awesome. Great question.
Yeah, it is actually a cool question.
It's a little bit there's actually a question which was submitted before. It was, I don't know who wrote it, but it was, what would you like to see go away from this space? And I think they're talking about the community industry in general. Have you noticed anything the last few years which are perhaps toxic, or things which have changed which you would like to go away?
Oh, like go away from the space. I thought you meant like, what would you like to go?
That's what I
go. Like, what should you take away to become better? Let's do it both ways, because I see it both ways. So let's talk to what could we do about toxic and bad. I think one of the things that I don't like about community management in general is that people think it's social media management, which it's not. And it's like, come on, people. There's an entire thing around this. This is not us managing social media, and I really hope that goes away and that companies come around to the fact that community management is a sorry, I was reading one of the comments, is a actual complex and very it's an incredible industry to be in, and what you're able to do. Sorry, Sebastian was like, people think that she runs in an apartment complex, which actually you could actually equate to, like everybody at different levels and the different people in the complex and stuff. So, but yes, it's very difficult to explain this to my grandmother. My mom still doesn't even really understand what I do, and that's okay. It's changing. What's cool is I am seeing more and more people becoming vice presidents of community, more and more people becoming community professionals, and I'm really hoping that actually becomes much more in the future. I know that CMX is doing a lot of work on that. They've been pushing it for years, and the more people can talk about it, the more people can push it, the more people we can get into that, the more it becomes. Should community sit under marketing? Well, it depends on the business, but actually it shouldn't. It should be its own entity doing its own thing. It should, it shouldn't be under the CMO, because what their goal is business driven. Community is not business driven. Yes, you can use it to create business and to create cool stuff, but the sole focus or the sole focus of it, or purpose, is for it to build a community around your brand or around your feelings or ideals or whatever, and that should remain the focus, not the fact that you can monetize it, which is what the CMOs or the community marketing side of things do. So that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, great point. I love that. I completely agree. There's been lots of job applications I've seen where it says community manager, just discusses Facebook and
exactly. Community is not just social; it's so much more. And I think that's the problem, because it is a community on social media is a community. It's where you engage with your community, but it's not your community. That's only a slice of your community. Yeah. People who buy your products, or people who attend your non-profit organization for whatever reason, or buy into that, they are your community. Yes, they might communicate on that one channel, but that's not where they all are. That's not your community. Yeah.
Totally. Did you have the other way to interpret that question? Did you have an answer?
Oh, that was the to become a professional. Yeah. So I hope to see in the future community become an actual,
gotcha.
And more pay for the poor people, because I love the saying for the community managers is you have to be the most sensitive, most soft person ever, but at the same time have the hardest skin and the hardest, because you take abuse, like so much abuse, internally, externally. The abuse is just torrential and ongoing. But at the same time, if you're not empathetic for that one person's needs and concerns, you are a tyrant, monster, the worst person in the world. It's just like, you got to have that balance. So community professionals are very, very, very special people.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I completely agree, but what would you describe those people as? I mean, you've mentioned a few things already, but how would you describe like a really good community professional and what their attributes are and what kind of personality
they're willing to learn, they're willing to listen, they can totally have a thick skin and be told, listen, you're totally shit at what you do, and they'll be like, that's fine, I'm doing it anyway, well, let's change this, let's make it better, and not go into a response and a defense and go, how dare you say that? You must be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. Cool. Let's work on this. Let's help me become better at this. If you got that disposition, I think if you have that disposition alone, you'll be a good community manager. Everything else can come after that. You can learn how to. Cheers, Madeline. Bye. You can learn how to work with community data. You can learn how to be more empathetic. Well, I suppose you can learn to become more empathetic. It doesn't come naturally. If it doesn't come naturally to you, don't go into community management. But if it does, you can become better at those things. You can become better at managing things, or managing your time, or managing the community, or reaching out to the community. Those things you can learn. But if you aren't able to take abuse and then still be nice back to the person and carrying on being nice and work with that person, then it's really tough. One of the biggest lessons I learned was I was doing a website. This is actually a website that had nothing to do with the community, but the story translates. I was doing a website for a company, for this guy. He was difficult, like difficult. You get those difficult customers. I'm building this website, I've done the thing, put it together. He wants this change and that done, so I'd kind of do it, but I run out of time because I'm also busy handling other projects, and I'm busy running Startup Grind, and I'm busy studying electronic engineering all at the same time, so I'm busy running out of time. One-man band show you with my web development. So eventually I sit down with the guy, and the guy's like, listen, I'm being very disappointed. You didn't do this, you didn't do this. This is bad. You've done this is great, but you didn't do that. He just listed these things. So I said, listen, I'm really sorry. I really apologize. Let's sort this out. And I promise you for the next 3 days, you've got 100% of my attention. And the guy said to me, you know what? He learned that lesson. He says, if you buy and that's where I learned the lesson, was from him saying to me, if you go and buy a Ford and it's the worst car you've ever bought, it just breaks down all the time. But you take it back to this mechanic and the guy with the seller that sold it to you, and they're like, listen, that's fine. Let's change this, fix this up, boom, 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 boom. And the car is perfect thereafter. You will never, ever not buy a Ford again. You'll be Ford for life. Even though it was a shit and it was a bad experience, because that person came and helped you and solved your problems, you become the biggest fan. And so therefore, after that, you had my respect, I had his respect, and we were able to work very well together. Actually, we had a really cool relationship. He's now passed away, unfortunately. But that was a lesson I learned, is that, and I've seen it as I've been going through life, the people that are your biggest critiques and the people that are the worst and the people that are absolutely, like absolutely the polar side of the fence, they can become your biggest fans and your biggest, your biggest fans and cheerleaders in your organization or company, if you know how to treat them properly and treat them like an individual human being, and work with them to solve the problems.
Yeah, No, I completely agree, and I've seen it myself. You know, some of our a few communities over on some of the biggest kind of arseholes, if you like, turn into being some of the biggest, most passionate fans once you've solved the problems for them. It's almost like they've got passion,
exactly.
Right? That passion can be good.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Your passion, because these are passionate people. They carry it, and they're like they take it out on you. But then and then you work with them, and then they realize, and then that passion changes, and you're able to condition that passion to the other side, and then it's magic. Because then they're like, how dare you say that about the product? It's the best thing ever, you know. And then everybody, because they're so passionate, believes them and starts following them, you know. They become great advocates for your community. So,
yeah, I like what you said as well. It reminded me, you said something about where kind of the community managers are almost taking the brunt of people's, we're kind of dealing with people. And it almost is like an extension of the service industry. We're not waiters, we're not restaurateurs, but we're actually kind of in the service industry. We're creating great experiences, whether that's online or offline, or vocal or in text. But it's kind of in the service industry in many ways.
That is actually very true. We are concierges of the community.
Which means that Badlands thing about apartment complexes is actually way more accurate than the first
one. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, if anybody doesn't quite understand what you're doing, just say, oh, it's like running an apartment complex. There we go. Boom.
I like that. We've got about 5 minutes left. Again, I'll give everybody a chance on the call first to ask any more questions. And there are a few more I'd love to get to, which were asked before. So, Philip, Beth, do you have anything else you'd like to ask personally, or should I dive into one or two of the last ones? All good? All right, let me have a quick look at what else we've got then. I've got one actually for you, G, which I'd like to ask people anyway. What's one of the biggest mistakes you made throughout your, let's say, community career, and how did you end up fixing it?
Very good question. I have now left Startup. I'm no longer with Startup Grind. I'm now working at Bevy full-time as a product manager. So I've gone from community, then I started overseeing community and engineering, and now I've gone over to the engineering side. So it's been quite an interesting journey. So I've had some time to reflect on my time at Startup Grind and what I've done and things. And one of my biggest things that I wish I'd done, no, it's not a regret, because I'm glad the way it went and what we did, but one thing I wish I did do was open the community much more up. And this is specific for me for Startup Grind. Being very focused on what we were doing and our, making sure that there's a standard across the board and that we didn't allow this and we didn't allow that. It's very good that we got those standards and that we do that, and that has to continue. But I don't feel I included the community as much as I wanted to in a lot of the decision makings and things. The reason why we didn't do it was because it would slow processes down and it becomes really difficult, and then suddenly everybody's a specialist in certain things when they don't actually see the bigger picture. But there's things we could have opened up, we could have done, which would have made a lot more better and would have brought in a lot more things. So that's one of the things that I'm like, if you are running a community, listen to the community and work with the community. It takes a lot of time, it slows things down, but the rewards are so much greater. And you'll have this really brought in, like Startup Grind community is incredible and they're all brought in and stuff. But if I'd done that earlier, because we've done it now in the last 2-3 years, that's what we've been fixing over the time. We've been making it more inclusive and everything. So it's resolving the problem, but it's still a problem. And it actually got into a point where it actually got quite bad, and there were like rumblings on the earth of Startup Grind, and we had to then change things, and it's because I didn't change it fast enough to do that. So that's one of the things, I think that's actually the main thing. And then just keeping for yourself. If you are a community professional, keep track of your stats, man. It takes a bit of time, but just like how many people in the community, what's happening. I know you have to do your reports for whoever you're doing it for, whatever, but just keep your own personal, because at the end of the day, you can turn around and say, look, I managed to do this. Like, I'm able to say I scaled from 300 to 600 chapters in 9 months. Like, that's a really cool thing. But that's basically one of the main things I did at Startup Grind. I've got other cool stuff that I did, but I never kept track of the stats. So I can't go like, oh, I also did this and I also did that. And, so as a professional, community professional, keep track of your own personal stats and make sure that people know what you're doing and how you've managed to increase certain things. And stats could be anything. I know often the question is like, what stats do you track and how do you keep those stats? And where do you go with the stats? And it really 100% depends on your community. There is the reason why it's so difficult to write a book on what stats you need to track is because it really totally depends on your community. For us at Startup Grind, it was about, making sure that events are being, the amount of chapters we have, that most of them host events monthly. That was our metric, But if you're looking at a product community, their stats that they might have to track is how many items were shipped or sold or something for that product, which obviously is not a good metric because it's not about community, it's about your product, but it's still a metric and you've got to track that, and that's fine. And if you are able to attribute to that, they are putting time and effort into that community and spending money on that community to build that, then, track that, make sure that it comes right. So, yeah.
I love that. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I think that pretty much brings us to the end. So I would just like to finish up by saying thanks so much for amazing insights. Really, it's been beautiful. It's given me a lot to think about for myself, both with stuff for CMX for in the future, but also in some of the other communities I'm running. It was really a great insight.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate that. And if anybody has...
I'm a little bit jealous of Beth of the place as well.
Sorry, with Beth, sorry?
Beth is...
the sun, the golden sunlight. Oh, yeah.
I'm jealous. We've not had much sun here recently. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. And I'd love to, thanks so much, G. It was really a great chat, and I appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us. So thanks, Philip and Beth and Donato, for joining, and hopefully see you guys very soon.